19th, 2023 special meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States and Texas flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Ms. Alcantara, are there any public comments? All right. The board will go into a closed meeting as authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act under the Texas Government Code sections listed on our agenda. The board is back in open session and the time is now 6 o'clock. There are no actions that need to be taken. So at this time, the special meeting is adjourned. I'd like to call to order the MISD September 19th, 2023 regular meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States and Texas flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Dr. Busby, are there any special recognitions this evening?
Yes, ma'am. You can see a great group of people out in the audience today, and so we do have some groups that we would like to recognize. And so I'm going to call to the front Justin Marino and Chris Lynn, who are going to introduce some of these groups.
Test. There it is.
There it is. Okay. Good evening. Yes, it's my pleasure this evening to have the opportunity to be able to say thank you to a couple of groups of individuals who oftentimes work behind the scenes, and most of the time we don't even realize what they're doing. Unfortunately, this summer, we made a big mess at multiple campuses throughout this district doing renovations. And luckily, we have one of our trusted partners, Metro Clean, provides all of our custodial services for our district. And so when time was getting short, before the kids were going to come back, we had to reach out and say, sorry, we didn't leave you as much time as you need to get these buildings turned back around, but we need your help. And they came running. They did an amazing job in a very short period of time. They spent countless hours, sometimes up here well past midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, waxing floors and making sure that the buildings looked nice for our employees and for our students. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to recognize Rogelio Castro and Manny from Metro Clean, if you would please. Without these two gentlemen, as I said, our campuses would not look half as great as they do. Many of you may see these two gentlemen on campuses throughout the district, and they have a wonderful team of employees that help clean our facilities. If any of their people were working this summer, they were there, right there beside them, late into the evenings and early mornings. And so that is truly what leadership looks like. If you're on campus, oftentimes you'll see Mr. Rogelio in his tie and vest, cleaning right along somebody else. And so they are the epitome of leadership and the example for their employees. And so I just wanted to say thank you personally to these two gentlemen and to all of their workers behind them who helped come this summer and really get our facilities cleaned up in a very short period of time. So just wanted to say congratulations and thank you for all your hard work and your effort.
Now, I would like to echo that appreciation. As we were getting ready to open, there were many times I would show up to those schools that were under construction, and it's not like we were done with all of those projects and they could just come in and clean everything. They had to section it off, so they would be waxing floors in this area one night while construction was going on in the hallway, and then the next night they would be somewhere else. So it was just amazing, the team effort that they put together to get all of that done. So thank you.
And then we've got another group that played an equally important part this summer and throughout the school year, and those are our campus-based and our district maintenance staff. Oftentimes, they're there early in the mornings or late at night. Unfortunately, during the summer, they were asked to do a lot of things that typically don't fall under their job description. A lot of moving and getting things put back in place. Their jobs are extremely difficult and are never the same, no matter if they're at the campus or at the district office. We don't acknowledge them enough, but we felt like this was a perfect opportunity to say thank you for everything that they did this summer to help get these campuses put back together, and everything that they do throughout the year to help keep our campuses running on a daily basis. And so I would like to ask Joe Kynard, our Director of Maintenance and Construction, to come forward and recognize the people that he has here this evening.
But this summer has been very unusual. I mean, I've been through the bond before where we had a lot of things under construction, but this one was so, on the junior high, MES and Lincoln were just really intense. A lot of things happening, a lot of emotions going on, and but everybody just stepped up, did what they had to do, which is really something that I'm proud of the maintenance to take a part of and be just a part of that. And Metro Cleaning, their staff also. There's just a lot of moving pieces, and we all worked as a team together, and we just helped each other out the best we could. So I'd like to introduce the guys that are here, then I'll also mention the ones that couldn't make it tonight. And if you wouldn't mind, if you'd stand up when I call your name. Chris Clark, he does our locks and keys. We got Lauren Durham, he's one of our HVAC techs. William Mosier, he's our plumber. We got Elsa Perez Ochoa. Yes. She does a little bit of everything, and she keeps our spirits up. So that's the biggest plus. Sandra Pessel, administrative assistant. Theo Reed, Montgomery High School. He's one of the campus techs there. Cody Ship, he works in conjunction with child nutrition and with the maintenance. Shimon Taylor, he is at Lake Creek High School, and he's the lead tech out there. And then David Crow is my new Assistant Director of Maintenance and Construction. Just a few of the ones that we work with on a daily basis. I would like to recognize the ones that aren't here tonight because their previous commitments. It's Mike Meyer. He's at Keaton and Lowe's, he does 2 schools. We got Greg Devereaux at the junior high. Don Gibbs, our RPM coordinator. Carl Hardy is at Lake Creek High School working with Shimon. Todd Heaton is our HVAC supervisor. Paul Henson is a district electrician. Jordan Mendoza is at Oak Hills Junior High. Bobby Nickerson does LES and MES. Richard Nolte is our other HVAC tech. And then we got James Bailion. He does MRE in Stewart Creek. Carlton White does Montgomery High School. This is a great team of people that we have put together over the years. I've inherited some, we've added some new ones to it, but every year they just have to step up and do more and more, and I'm very proud of what they do for the district.
I just want to say thank you to all you all. I know some of you don't feel noticed until the air conditioning's out or the plumbing's not working or something like that, and then you're Superman. But thank you so much for all of your hard work. And for the ones also that work in our schools on a daily basis, since I taught in the schools, I know that you are an integral part to the culture of those campuses. High fives are given and smiles are given to kids throughout the day, all day. And I also know that teachers know who to kiss up to get what they need in their classroom. So thank you for everything that all of you all do. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to recognize both of those groups.
All right.
All right, next we will have up Justin Marino for one more special recognition.
Before we move on to Synergistic, can we do separate photos with each group? So maybe start with Metro Clean. Can you all come up for a photo with the board, please? Thank you, Dr. Busby Board. Next, we'd like to recognize one of our premier partners. You can't be a premier district without premier vendors and premier partners. Synergistic partnered with Montgomery ISD in 2021 to help us hone in and focus on our energy consumption. We've talked a lot about our budget challenges in Montgomery ISD, and we're always looking at ways to stretch that budget and be strong stewards of our taxpayer dollar. And this is one way that we are leading the pack in this area. And so I'd like to ask our partners with Synergistic, Wayne Cauldron, to come up and share some information about how our work has supported our school district financially.
Thanks, Justin. Good evening, Dr. Busby, board. I have to thank Chris Lynn as well. I've been meeting with him and bugging him every other month for a couple of years now to try to get this rolling. So as Justin said, we're with Synergistic. We're based out of Dallas, and we try to come in and help clients reduce their consumption, thereby saving money on utilities. And so I'm going to move into this. We started in May of 2021, and we have 2 years under our belt now, so I'm going to give you an update on where we stand. Some of the program objectives we'll talk about is cost savings through reduced consumption, optimizing buildings and comfort systems, culture of sustainability created within the district, and we're feeling that happening now. 2 years in, we're really feeling that culture start to shift, and it's starting to show. Total program savings since the beginning of the program is $2.9 million. I was talking to Ben a while ago trying to get approval if I could round that up to 3, but CFO didn't approve. So 2.9 is where we stand as of the end of, what I say, July. So we're probably at the $3 million mark. Program saving measures impact on energy program utility consumption. It's 23% overall savings compared to the base year. Here's an energy use avoidance slide. Down there at the bottom, you have a key. You see base year, performance year 2, performance year 3. So the base year, that red line there, that's the energy, the KBTU usage the base year prior to us coming a partner. And so you can see there the green, that performance year 1, then the blue being performance year 2, and now we are the light green at the far left of June and July, continuing to drive that down year over year. So I'm excited about that. Some good news is that we are saving some money. The bad news is that your rates have been impacted. So in the base year, your electricity rates were 9 cents per kWh, and they're currently about 14 cents. And with natural gas, it was $1.10 up to $1.57. So you can see a 58% increase in your spend on electricity just in your rate alone, and 44 on natural gas. And had you paid those prices at the rate now, it would be another $1.7 million that you would have spent without the energy program reducing that consumption. Here's the EUI, energy use intensity. It's I guess a term that we use in our industry. What you do is you take the different measurements of kWh, which is kilowatt hours, and maybe CCFs or therms in natural gas. You combine those together and divide it by square footage, and you come up with an EUI number. So when we started here in the base year, it was 69, and proud to say right now we're at a 45. We're driving to 35, and so we're still heading downward. It's getting harder, but we're going to continue to work hard for you. Here's some environmental impact. The amount of energy reduced by MISD since the beginning of the program for electricity and natural gas is equivalent to, let's say everybody understands a smartphone. Is that $1.8 trillion? I have to defer to the CFO over there. Tree seedlings grown, 250,000 tree seedlings grown for 10 years, and then 15,000 metric tons of CO2, and how you can figure that. Figure a 27-foot by 27-foot cube, so a 2-story by 2-story. 15,000 of those is how much metric tons of CO2 has been removed from the atmosphere by not using that energy. So I'm going to hand this off to, is there any questions? Anybody have any questions for me?
We're just glad you came.
Uh-oh, I messed up, Justin.
Oh.
Thank you.
On the graph where you said it was heading down to 35, is there what's the goal?
It's a goal to get to a 35 EUI district-wide. Now, some schools are going to be higher, some schools are going to be lower, some buildings are higher, some are lower, but that's the goal to get to overall. And I'm going to ask Kevin to come up to talk about Energy Star and Best in Class.
Sure, thanks. Good evening. Yeah, I'm here tonight to recognize all the great stuff that's happening in this district. You know, its mission to be good stewards of the financial resources of this community continues to be paramount, and we at Synergistic really continue to applaud your efforts in that way. You know, even though utilities is only a part of your overall budget, the district's commitment to stewardship in all things, even the little things, is something that this community should continue to be proud of. As evidence of this work, we're also here to recognize a few specific schools this evening for their individual achievement of earning Energy Star certification for their building. And so you may remember as you're walking in stores to see, you know, Energy Star logos on different appliances. Well, you can also get Energy Star recognition for your building as well through the EPA. And so earning Energy Star certification for a building, it basically means you've met strict energy performance standards. You use less energy. They're less expensive to operate. They emit fewer greenhouse gas emissions, and they demonstrate well-being standards for optimum student achievement. And so we're not sacrificing the learning that's happening in the classroom on behalf of trying to save energy. We're trying to accomplish both things simultaneously. And so we really want to recognize these 4 sites that have representatives here this evening. And so if you are a site, a rep, please stand up when I call, when I mention the site. So Keenan Elementary School, Lake Creek High School, Lincoln Elementary School, and Oak Hills Junior High School. It's truly remarkable what your leaders and staff have been able to accomplish over the past 2 years working with Synergistic. Please be seated. We talked about 35% energy reduction, 37 million miles of automobile CO2 emissions that were never released into the environment, freeing up additional resources that can be spent in areas closest to kids. These are all things that we can rally behind as a community, and we want to applaud your efforts as a school district. Imagine what the world would look like if every school district did what Montgomery ISD has done in this area. There probably wouldn't be an energy crisis if everyone was as diligent to their individual behaviors that led to waste and increased energy consumption. So Synergistic is here tonight, proud to recognize Montgomery ISD as a best-in-class district. We're also proud to help Montgomery ISD in its mission of keeping resources closest to kids by awarding the district a $2,500 scholarship. It's my honor to recognize these schools for their hard-earned Energy Star plaques. We also have a best-in-class banner. If you could maybe just show it off to the board. Yep. So we're here to present this best-in-class banner, as well as an obelisk as tokens of your successful efforts and your status as a model district for energy stewardship across the country. Congratulations on this fantastic achievement.
I think we're done. That's all I had for there, but I did miss the opportunity to introduce Ken Buchholz. He's the energy specialist who's on site, day-to-day, boots on the ground, working with everybody as far as reducing energy, but also from a front of comfort, making sure that the buildings are comfortable.
I just want to add one point. So after every major holiday, these gentlemen send us sort of a report on which campuses participated in, making sure all their lights were off, major appliances were unplugged, and we share those reports with our principals. And we have some pretty competitive principals, academics, athletics, fine arts, but you should have seen their faces when they saw who was beating them in the energy consumption. So I think the competitiveness of our principals and our staff, everybody has bought into this, which has made it such a success in our school district. So I think we want to take a photo.
Mr. Marino, can I ask one quick question? When it comes to the schools, the 4 schools right now that are Energy Star compliant, do we have plans on the remaining schools in our district on getting there, or?
Sure, it's a great question. So I know I don't have a lot of time, but the EPA, what they do is as we come in and we do audits in the building, and we submit the information to a team of engineers who then submits it to the EPA. So across the country, you're taking schools and they compare to their peers across the U.S. And so the ones that earn that Energy Star recognition are in the top 25 percentile. So if there's 100 schools, 75 of them will not make the cut, 25 will. And so we're always working to make those buildings more efficient. And so what that does for us is it really says there's a challenge out in front of us to get, next time we come out here a year from now to talk about this, because we're going to do this every year to have 7 or 8 buildings completed, if not all 10. But if they go on a roll in California and build a whole lot of new schools and they're very efficient, it just makes it hard to compete. So we got to do our best here in-house, and everybody has to play a part. So yes, the goal is to get all the schools. As of now, we got 4 this year. So
perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
How are you?
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Busby says that we're done with special recognition, so we're gonna move on to our next portion. Ms. Alcantar, do we have any public comments? No? All right, moving on to consent agenda. Is anyone interested in pulling a consent agenda item this evening? No? Okay, if there are none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Rob. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Nguyen, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries. Moving down to action items. 6A, First Amendment to MOU with Baylor College of Medicine.
All right, for this action item, I'm going to invite our Director of Community Services, Courtney Dyer, to come up and give us a little bit of information about what we call T-Chat. And so we are fortunate to have had that program in the district and are looking to continue that. So she's going to give us an update.
Yes, so thank you, Dr. Busby, and thank you, Board, for considering to approve our extension with our MOU. We've had this program for the last 2 years, and several of our students have definitely benefited from having these resources and supports at their fingertips, and have definitely impacted their lives for sure. So what is T-Chat? There we go. So T-Chat stands for Texas Child Health Access Through Telemedicine. It's one of the 5 initiatives through the Texas Child Mental Health Care Consortium that was created back in 2019 during the 86 Texas legislation. It's part of Senate Bill 11. And so coming off the heels of COVID, the state said, hey, we're going to provide money to several of our health institutions, and they wanted those health institutions to be sure that children and adolescents were receiving the supports they needed in the areas of mental health and behavior. So hence, T-Chat arose. So the great thing about T-Chat is that it's free. It's a school-based telemedicine program, kind of like Teladoc, that can help identify and assess behavioral and mental health needs of children and adolescents. T-Chat coverages the whole state of Texas, and there's 12 health institutions that help cover that. And so in our region, in our area, we work with Baylor College of Medicine in partnerships with T-Chat to provide those services. So the impressive part about T-Chat, that it is staffed by child and adolescent psychiatrists, professional counselors, as well as social workers to provide those supports for our students. So how exactly does T-Chat work? So you have a student who maybe has been identified as needing a support, either by a parent or a school, and then that counselor can have conversations with that parent and offer T-Chat as one of those services. And so if the parent wants to move forward, then that counselor can make a referral to T-Chat, and then T-Chat takes over from there, and they will reach out to the parent to gain that additional consent, and then set up that first virtual appointment. The past 2 years, we've had virtual appointments that normally happen outside of the school day, but those appointments can happen during the school day if it doesn't interrupt that student's learning or their instruction. So that T-Chat interventions to be short-term, meaning probably will last about 4 to 6 weeks. And then the great part about that, once that period of time is over, then T-Chat will work with those families to continue services outside of their T-Chat services. So they'll work with them to find places in the community if that student still needs support, to get that support for those students. So what has T-Chat meant to MISD? So I truly believe without T-Chat that many of our students would not have received the supports that they had needed. When we take a look at the last 2 years, In 2021 and 2022, 25 referrals were made to TCHAT, and 17 of our students received intervention. And then in last year, 34 referrals were made to TCHAT, with 25 students receiving intervention. So that's a total of 42 students receiving intervention and support, which again, like I said, I don't think those students would have received that support if we wouldn't have had those resources made available. Again, because they are free services, and even receiving mental health and behavioral supports is expensive even with insurance. And then also because it's virtual, it's very accessible to our families, so they can access those resources during the school day, after hours, maybe when the parents get home from work. So by extending our contract or working with our MOU, we'll be able to work with TCHAT for 3 more years. And so that would put us to this year and 3 more years in 2026. So thank you for your consideration.
Are there any questions?
I actually have a couple. So are they going to, when they're identified as a student of need, if they opt to get involved with the program, are they working with the same individual counselor each time through that 4 to 6 week period?
Yes, for the most part. What happens is once that parent signs consent, then they do an intake interview. They'll assess that student, see what their needs are, and then they'll, just like a counseling session in person with a therapist, those counselors will set up times, appointments virtually to meet with those students.
Okay, and then the other thing, so in the event that they go through the 4 to 6 weeks and they're identified as somebody that needs continuing support, is there a cost to that? And is that something that this program will continue with past that 4 to 6 weeks, or do they get handed off to some other?
They will work with those families to try to stay within their means. And so obviously if they're receiving that free service, they'll want to seek out services in our community that can continue those same services. So I think it just depends on the student need, and also if the family does have some type of insurance or other type of support. So I think that the goal is to be able to continue the same level, hopefully at the same cost.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about it is that coordinating services, because once they get connected with them, the next stage is that's what's hard for parents, is to try to figure out what is available, and this organization has those connections, and so they can point them in the right direction.
Right, because it's very easy to get frustrated and discouraged, and some parents won't continue to seek that out, but that's where TCHAT comes into play. They have tremendous assets and resources to help our parents. So.
Are we helping facilitate that? Like as a district, or our counselors, if they're going into this program and they need additional resources, are we helping to facilitate that to make sure they don't lose interest or get frustrated and just not continue with the process at all?
Yes, and our counselors are very involved in the training piece of TCHAT. And like I said, TCHAT is just one resource that counselors can offer to our parents and to our students. So it's just like any other resource that may be available. But yes, so and those counselors or the therapists that are with TCHAT, they'll pick up the phone and actually call our counselors sometime. So they do work in conjunction with each other for the best benefit of our kiddos.
Perfect, thank you.
So it's free to the student, but is it free to the school?
Yes, it's free to the school district and to
Funds this?
the state of Texas. That was part of Senate Bill 11.
Okay.
They said, hey, we have these funds, and this is how we want you to use them.
And the good thing is the virtual, I think, because there are crisis times that you can't get your student to a counselor.
Yes,
Yeah.
and and some students, just like adults, they do better with virtual, and some don't do well with virtual.
Right.
Sometimes our younger ones struggle a little bit more, but there are some parameters with age. Like if we have younger kiddos, they do require that the parent be present for that piece. So it's been very well thought out. I've been very impressed. They really have. I meet with them monthly. They get feedback from us, and then they give us feedback as well. They're really interested in how it's operating within the school district, and they want to improve it to make sure our kids are getting the best service.
That's great.
Is there an alternative? I thought I was done. One more question.
That's okay.
Is there an alternative to, and you may have said this, to doing the virtual, for instance, if there's a kid that may not have the means to do an appointment or whatever, after hours? Is we're making time for them to be able to do it during school?
Correct, yes. And being considerate, though, of their not missing instruction time. So we just work with that parent to see what works best, or maybe that student doesn't have access to internet or something at home. TCHAT actually also provides laptops to the district, because they said, we don't want you using your resources and taking resources away from other kids. So if a campus needs a laptop to utilize that virtual appointment, then they can check that out from me and use it as well.
See if they'll send us a few more.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Tight budgets are,
All right, any more questions?
I think I'm done.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the First Amendment to the MOU with Baylor College of Medicine as presented?
I'll move to approve the MOU at Baylor College of Medicine as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Dennison. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Porton.
Right,
All
thank
in-
you.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries. All right, moving to 6B, technology purchase over $50,000.
All right, so the next bit of information we have on our action items is some technology purchases. So we have Amanda Davis that is going to fill us in on those needs.
I am not free, sorry. So the first one is going to be for technology infrastructure upgrades. So this is prepping for next summer for Oak Hills and to purchase devices or purchase the infrastructure pieces for Creekside. We're still having supply chain issues in getting those in. Hopefully they're going to be in before next summer hits. If not, then we do have alternative plans on getting Creekside up and going, but we want to make sure that everything gets ordered for those two schools, since everyone else has already kind of been done for their networking upgrades. Questions?
Any questions? It's pretty straightforward. All right. Are there any motions?
I'll make a motion to approve purchases over $50,000 for technology infrastructure upgrades and for technology devices with bond funds is presented.
Thank you, Ms. Porton.
That was a
Is
mouthful.
there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Dennison. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries. Moving to 6C, technology purchase over $50,000.
So this is going to be for managed services. This is for our data center. We spent the last couple of years upgrading servers, upgrading our firewall pieces. And so the company that is providing the technology for inside of the schools is going to make sure that we are using all of that technology with fidelity. So we want to make sure that all of our policies align with our cybersecurity framework, that we are making sure that devices are connecting like they should, that they're getting out to the internet like they should, and that they're keeping our students safe, not only from what they could search for, but also what could go onto the devices. So this piece is just making sure that we are being monitored for the first year. As we have implemented all of these technology changes, we want to make sure that we're continuing that momentum. So this is for managed services of our data center.
Any questions?
How is our strength as far as the district as a whole right now?
Which piece?
Okay.
Cybersecurity?
Just in connectivity and stuff like that.
Connectivity-wise, we have isolated it to a certain type of device that is currently at our elementary schools. We are making progress every day in getting those connected. We have actually the vendor coming out tomorrow to assess why this particular device is not wanting to stay connected to the internet. We've been playing with different networks. We've been playing with different policies, just not playing with, but strategically placing different things at different schools to see which one is going to be the most effective, not Band-Aid, but fix overall, yes. But connectivity-wise, every other campus and every other device can connect and get to where they need to go in seconds or less, yeah.
Okay.
How are we doing with damages to these devices?
So endpoints. Depends on the campus, honestly. There are some campuses that have very, very smart students and how they handle their devices. Some of it is just some of it is accidental, some of it is purposeful. I don't think that there's too many that we're not able to fix, but we are getting probably 70, 80 loaners a day at our high schools right now.
We have
That's
enough.
probably something we could get a more concise update on. We'll
Yes.
have a technology department update this fall, and so she can get maybe some data together for us and get some exact numbers.
Do we have enough of them on hand?
We do. Most campuses have 100, 150 devices that are being used as loaner devices. So when a student comes in and needs it, they are issued it immediately, no matter what, whether it's a repair or it's a damaged device. So those are there. We also have Chromebooks that we're looking at placing on the secondary campuses in the future. So we might start kind of filtering those into like junior high to start with, and then moving up into high school.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any more questions? All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve purchases over 50,000 for technology managed services.
Thank you, Ms. Porton.
You're welcome.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries. I want to say before you leave the podium, thank you so much to your department for what y'all have done. I know that you've had to deal with, because technology frustrates people, and all of this stuff is rolling out, and I'm sure it's been super hard because you get a lot of frustrated people. But thank you for what your department has been doing. We really appreciate you all.
Well, and I can appreciate the teachers. The teachers, even though their patience are wearing thin, have been very patient with us as we keep telling them, it's coming, it's coming, it's going to be better, we promise, it's going to be better. And they're like, yes, yes, we've heard it before. But we are making progress, we are making strides, and we hope to have a full resolution for all of those problems very soon.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, moving to 6D, change order number 1 for LCHS and MHS artificial turf.
Yeah, good evening. I am here this evening asking for your approval for change order number 1 for the Lake Creek High School baseball and softball artificial turf project. As discussed with you previously, once the contractor got on site, they brought up some concerns that they were noticing with the soil conditions. Some additional testing was performed, and it was determined that we needed to do some additional moisture or soil conditioning, which has resulted in this change order. All of that information is in your board packet this evening, and I just ask for your approval of that item.
Any questions for Mr. Lynn?
Is the completion date still on track, or is this delayed?
Yes, we did lose about a month worth of time, but even with that delay, we are still scheduled to be completed before the end of the year, so, before the season starts.
What does this do in terms of our overall budget? Are we still good with our contingency dollars and things like that?
Talking about the bond as a whole?
As a whole.
Yes, absolutely. Just looking at numbers today, we've had projects that have come in under budget. We've had some come in over budget, just like we expected and anticipated. We do have contingency dollars budgeted throughout all of those projects. So I do feel comfortable with where we're at financially at this point. Don't forget that we also earn interest on the money that's currently sitting in the bond investment account. So we have those funds available to us as well. So far, as of the end of August, we had earned a little over $6.2 million in interest so far. And remember, that money will be spent just like bond monies that were approved by the voters. It will go back into the projects to either enhance or to cover overages like this on projects as we move through the program.
So our timelines, we seem to be hitting our timelines with projects and across the board.
Yes, sir. For the most part, all of our bond projects are on schedule. Obviously, the summer renovation ones are the most difficult to achieve because at best case, you have 8 weeks. Worst case, you have about 6 weeks to get a lot of work done. And so those are always the hardest, but everything else is tracking on schedule.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you have another question?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the change order number 1 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Dennison. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Robb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, we're done with action items. Moving on to information items, we're going to 7A, first reading of revisions to DEC local.
Okay, so during the legislative session, there were some updates to leave that was available to our peace officers. So this revision is to update our board policy to reflect those changes.
All right. Any questions?
Great.
Moving on to the next one, 7B.
Right, so district improvement plan and campus improvement plan. I'm going to put my student services hat on for just a moment and talk to us a little bit about our district improvement plan. I'm guessing I have a Vanna over there to push buttons for me. Awesome. So on the district and campus plans, this is something that we do each year, and the board has to do 2 things. You have to create and adopt the goals for the district, and then you have to ensure that the district improvement plan and improvement plans for each campus are developed, and so those were in your packet for review. District goals. So this is something that we spent a lot of time, or the school board spent a lot of time in the school year 2020 to 2021 as we were developing our strategic plan. Those goals are active through this school year, and so we have the 5 goals in the areas of academic achievement, school safety, finance and operations, human capital, and then communications and customer service. So as we work on our district improvement plan, we do use a program called Plan for Learning. So this is kind of what that screen looks like, and we get the goals placed in that program so we can use that to then monitor. The strategic plan, this was something that, of course, we're familiar with, that this was something that was put together June 2021. The committees came together to determine what the goals were for the district and how we were going to accomplish those goals. So here are our goals, but then what are the performance objectives that we are working on, and then what are the strategies that we are using to accomplish those things. So the strategic plan is a separate document than the district improvement plan, but they are in a line with each other. So the things that you see in the district improvement plan will reflect the things that we are working on in the strategic plan. And so this is an example of one of the pages in our district improvement plan. You can see it reflects our goal. And actually, I think you can push the button here. Yeah, so each one consists of these 3 things. So you'll see the goal, and it'll reflect the district goal there. And then their performance objective will be listed. And then you can read that performance objective that works on that goal. And then underneath the performance objective goals are the strategies. So those are the specific things that the district or the campus is doing to work on those performance objectives. We also have built into the program the ability to do quarterly evaluations. So this is that ongoing monitoring of how we're doing. And of course, you hear us talk about strategic plan updates throughout the year. That's in line with what we're doing with our district improvement plan. How are we doing on these goals? Are we making progress? And then at the end of the year, we can decide that this goal has been accomplished and we're done, or this is something we need to continue or maybe modify, or maybe it's something that we feel like doesn't meet our district needs anymore and it can be discontinued. So from here, we have our campus improvement plans. So each campus is responsible for developing their plan. The campus plan reflects the district goals, but they can then edit it and make their own performance objectives and their own strategies that are there to help them reach those district goals, and then campus-specific goals that they may have to a goal to accomplish. So in your board book, you do have a copy of the district improvement plan and each of the campus improvement plans for your review. After this meeting, they will be posted on our school district website. They become part of our annual report that is also reported and posted on our website. So from here, I would like to introduce Carrie Ashlock from Lincoln Elementary, and she's going to talk a little more specific about the process that goes on a campus to develop a campus improvement plan.
All right, well, thank you for letting me come and talk about the process that we've developed and have gone through over the past few years. You can go ahead and click. Okay, I have a clicker here too. So in developing our campus improvement plan, we want to make sure it is collaborative. It's not something I do in my office with the door shut. We involve a lot of our stakeholders, and we have a common purpose of ensuring it's a culture of continuous improvement. We're never done. It's going to constantly be improving. Again, stakeholder involvement, we include students in part of it. We have our parents, we have community members, our teachers, our paras. There's a lot of involvement going on in developing this plan. Because we are a Title I school, and actually all schools, there are different federal programs that have requirements that go into the campus improvement plan, and we use a variety of data sources. We use survey data, like the survey that's coming up in October that's going to go out to all of our families and our staff. That's a big piece of our data. We use our STAR data, our universal screener data. We do, when we have staff who leave, we use their exit survey data. When we have new staff come in, there's a new staff survey. We use all the information we can get our hands on because we want to have a big, healthy view of what we're doing well and what we need to work on, because we're not going to get better if we only have a limited view. And so we put all that together and develop a campus needs assessment. And I'm going to show you, like, all of that goes together. This is what it looks like when we're done. It's a big binder. It has all of these are the things we're going to work on. But it's a very large amount of information that we compile. So this is the continuous improvement cycle. The campus needs assessment that I just showed you, that's where we identify our needs. Then we select those. Based on that, we develop our campus improvement plan, which is where we select relevant evidence-based interventions. Like whatever's not working, we find out what can we do to fix it or to improve. And then we implement that plan, which is where we're at right now. Or we plan for the implementation, which is the improvement plan, and then we implement it, and then throughout the year, as Dr. Busby just said, every quarter we measure how are we doing. Are we getting better? Do we need to revise something? How do we need to adjust? And then we do it again every year. I said earlier there are some statutory requirements. So Title I and Title IV have different, the CNA process is the comprehensive needs assessment. So those different federal programs require that the process that I'm going to talk about to be used in developing the campus improvement plan, and it's strongly recommended for Titles II and III. Okay, I know that's really hard to see, but I just want you to see these are different stakeholders that are identified or recommended for involvement in that campus needs assessment. You can see on that left column with the checks, every one of those programs requires parent involvement. On the right is the community like businesses and community members. On the right, there's teachers on there, paraprofessionals, support staff, principals. There's a lot of people involved in gathering the data and in putting our plan together. Okay, so this is how we do it. So the first thing we do, usually in January, we meet with our staff or our leadership team and we talk about, we just remind ourselves, what does the campus comprehensive needs assessment do? Why do we do it, and how are we going to do it? Then we get together different focus area committees for different sections. Like one person cannot gather all that data because that's all you would do. So we have different task forces on our campus who do that. That's in February. February to March, they go about gathering the data. They get it all together, and that committee or task force gets together, and they analyze that data. They get everything they can, they look at it, and then they come together in March to April to decide these are the priority things. Of all that data we gathered, here's the things we say are the most important we really need to focus on. They're going to make the biggest difference for our campus. And then the last thing we do is put all that together into our campus improvement plan, finding those interventions that are going to be successful. These are the 8 categories that we look at that we gather data around. So we have school context and organization, our demographics. This year we had a lot of interesting surprises in our demographics. We have our student achievement data, curriculum instruction and assessment, school culture and climate, staff quality, recruitment and retention, parent, family, community engagement, and then technology. And then if you click that one more time, these are the 6 task forces that Lincoln has. We already have those established throughout the year, but during the spring, their whole goal is to work on our campus, our comprehensive needs assessment. And you can see they kind of align with those different focus areas. So here are some highlights from this year's. Look, and here we go. Here are the good things. Here are some things that we celebrated this year. We saw an increase in our STAR scores for our 3rd through 5th grade reading and 4th through 5th grade math. And these are all the things we talk about are tied to the MISD strategic plan goals, which is how we tie it to our campus improvement plan. We saw student growth in math from the beginning to the end of the year on our K through 2 universal screeners. So I think one of the reasons I want to talk about those separately is because we don't just look at STAR scores, even though that's a lot of what our accountability rating is measured by. We want to look at the whole picture. We established collaborative practices for the use of formative assessments that informs our decisions about intervention and enrichment. That came up in one of our surveys, actually several of our surveys as a strength. We continued to see a decrease in our office discipline referrals and ISS and OSS assignments. We had 100% highly qualified staff, and our staff retention rate increased by 22%. Our parents noted that we had a variety of meeting opportunities, communication, and survey formats. One thing we did, we have the big survey that we send out, but then we do them periodically throughout the year. We also, in our newsletters, have started like a 1-question survey. Like we need to know something really quick. And sometimes we may get more of a response if you just have to answer 1 question versus 50. In fact, we just did one this past week about how do you want us to notify you when there's a weather emergency that may have come up on Friday. They all want to know by text, by the way. Justin, just so you know, text. And then we also had on our annual survey, we did have an increase in positive receptions from students, parents, and staff in almost every area. Here are some areas we identified as ways to grow, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows. We saw that of our students who weren't successful on STAR, we identified special education as a population we need to continue to work on. We saw progress being made, but it wasn't at the same rate as our students who don't have IEPs. We have underperformed in science for the past 3 administrations, so that's one of our big goals this year. We saw a slight decline in 5th grade math STAR scores over 3 years. It's still in the 84 to 88% range, but it's not where we want it to be. Using our universal screener data, we saw that in kindergarten through 2nd grade, we need to work on some basic decoding. And then we need to continue working on our attendance. We increased it a little bit, but it's still not where we want it to be. And we want to increase the participation of our parents and community in our events that we have. And then these are strategies that aligned with the needs we identified. For our students who were struggling with IEPs, we found a really good book study, and we're making it voluntary this year, highly encouraging it from some of our staff, but we're going to use that as one of our means for addressing that one. We have professional development on differentiated instruction, specifically aligned with the needs of our targeted subpopulations, provision of targeted intervention and support for at-risk students in 5th grade science during scheduled intervention time or in before or after school tutoring. We have weekly collaboration as part of our PLC with a focus on designing quality learning around those guaranteed essential learning targets. And then we have regular opportunities for vertical content collaboration. We found that to be very powerful. Our most, if you remember back to one of our strengths was 3rd through 5th grade reading on STAR. That is one of our vertical teams that meets every other week, and we've seen the most growth. So we want to continue that in other areas as well. Collaboration with our pre-K to 2nd grade teachers and our district reading specialists 2 to 4 times a month to work on that decoding area that we identified. We have 2 intervention and enrichment blocks during the day. And then we want to regularly communicate with our parents and students the importance of that regular attendance. And we have some specific things that we're doing with that. So that's how we come up with our campus improvement plan. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
As far as among the 6 elementaries, how much would you say these improvement plans vary?
Do you want me to answer that?
One of you. I don't know.
No, I could probably answer because I look at them all. No, I think this is a process that you will see kind of consistently applied, where they are doing something on their campus to identify needs. Our 3 title campuses are a little bit more in-depth on going into really drilling down onto what those needs, because they have additional requirements than the other three. So you'll see some variances in those different campuses that way.
Any other questions? As far as, once you have your campus improvement plan, how in-depth do you go over that with the entire staff?
So at our back to school in August, is one of the things I first went over pretty in depth with our team leaders and our leadership team, and then we went over the most important pieces that we're spending the most time on with the people it affects. Like if it's specific to K through 2 decoding, I didn't talk to 3rd through 5th as much about it because that doesn't connect with them. But we talked about the part that relates to them and their kids.
And one more question. If somebody says, I want to see what the goals are of my certain campus, do they go to your actual campus page, or are all of them listed on the
We have
MISD
right,
website?
on the MISD webpage, there is a page that has a link for all of them.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ashlock. Lincoln Elementary really has done a great job just kind of being the model for what an excellent process looks like. So I appreciate her campus's efforts on this.
All right. Moving on to 7C, accountability update.
All right, we're going to have our Assistant Superintendent of Secondary come up and give us just what the newest information is out there on accountability.
Yes, good evening. So my original intent was to come up and give you a briefing on A through F and the changes that were coming when we get scores next week. However, some things have changed. And so if you will remember when I last talked with you in April, I gave you the analogy that this whole new A through F rating system is more like a game of piñata, and not just trying to hit it while you have a blindfold and you get spun around, but the state of Texas has decided to start yanking on the rope and pulling the piñata up, making it much more difficult for us to hit the target. And they are now having to reassess some of those decisions they made. So I'm going to just be real brief, but I'm going to give you an update sort of where we're at with A through F. So again, as I mentioned, sort of extra big release from TEA last Tuesday. Caught a lot of us unexpectedly. We weren't thinking that this was going to happen, but the commissioner decided to temporarily delay the release of A through F accountability ratings. And so on the 12th of September, they issued this TAA letter, which is basically an administrator addressed letter. And in it, the big piece that they put on there is communicated previously they were going to put A through F ratings out next week, and that was already going to be a little bit of a delay from when they like to get them out in August because they were changing the A through F systems, the cut scores, the scale scores, and they had to sort of assess and measure all of the new tests that they gave and get that data. And so they weren't supposed to be issued until next week. But as they were looking at the data, specifically academic growth, they noticed something was way off for the entire state. And when I say the entire state, in just a moment I'll give you a quote that proves it's the entire state. So now what with this new announcement? I'll tell you this, last week Commissioner Morath was quoted in the Houston Chronicle, asked about the delay, and in that he said essentially that the state had developed some goals that they wanted all the schools to achieve, and one of those goals was academic growth, and so they set up some potential or what they thought would be the cut scores for what would make an A, B, C, or D campus or an F for academic growth. Basically, how many of your kids get 1 year of growth from 1 year to the next. And in the assessment of the data, a rather profound quote came out from Commissioner Morath that said, and if no campuses in the state can possibly achieve it, the goal, the cut scores that they had for what I believe are academic growth, if no school can possibly achieve that given current levels of performance, that isn't a reasonable goal. And so I would highlight the very beginning of that statement, and if no campuses in the state. He didn't say if a lot, most, all but a few. He said no campuses. And what I read between the lines, and I've talked to a couple of assessment sort of gurus and contacts in the state, and when I asked them, does he mean no campuses can get an A, they said that that would be a safe assumption. So that what they developed for the cut scores and the scale scores to measure no school, not a singles campus in the entire state of Texas could achieve that. And we don't have proof. I don't know if they'll ever release that or not, but I thought those were strong words from Commissioner Morath. So here's what the letter, kind of just to give you some specifics from that. They said the agency proposed setting growth cut scores based on growth from 1819 to 2122. Why that big range? We know something happened in 1920, right? COVID. And so there was no testing in 1920. Then in 2021, it was sort of optional testing. A lot of districts gave it, but some could sit out. So 21-22 was the first year that they had really given widespread STAR test once again. And so they looked at the growth from 1819 compared to 21-22, and then they were setting some cut scores and scale scores. All those are fancy words for just saying how you perform on the STAR test. We're going to create some scale scores that take your grade and make it attributable to an A, B, C, D, which most sort of folks outside of education can better relate to, like what's a sort of a 90% and 80%. There's a problem with that, though. The statewide growth data from 22-23 has become a challenge because the massive growth. Now, we had really good growth and performance in Montgomery ISD throughout. A lot of our kids came to school, they did well, our teachers did well, the students did well, and so we didn't see, say, a huge drop-off in 1920 test scores to 2021 and then 21-22. But the state saw a significant amount of growth, and we talked about that a little bit last year when we looked at our scores. Well, they're calling that now an anomalous growth, and one that was so sort of off base that setting baselines from that is impractical. Basically what they're saying is there was a massive amount of growth from 1819 to 21-22. And then when they looked at the 22-23 data, what they thought they could use as cut scores for like what's a nice growth trend, flatlined. And in fact, in a lot of campuses and a lot of districts across the state, growth took a dip down. And I'll talk to you briefly in a moment why I think that is. So basically they had all these sort of growth measures of what would be an A and a B and a C, and no campus, again, that was his words, no campus was able to achieve what I think is what they considered the A status or the A cut score for that. So they decided to delay the issuance of this and to recalculate those cut scores and scale scores. So student scores are not changing. If a student got a meets or a master's or whatnot, that stays the same. What they're working on are what are the scale scores and then the cut marks for what would be an A, B, or C for a campus or a district based on the percentage of students that achieved a certain level.
Wouldn't it be safe to say they need another year of test scores to be able to see that actual growth?
Well, I mean, I think they're just going to have to reduce those scale marks now quite a bit. And I don't know what they were, because part of this delay is they were supposed to put the manual out last week. And because they were supposed to put the manual out on Wednesday, I believe it was, and they weren't going to be able to because they now have to recalculate everything, that's what it caused them to issue that letter. So they'll still use the student data. They believe that that's okay, but they need to look at how they're going to grade these schools and districts. So kind of what those big green boxes are, basically domain 2A is the part that looks at academic growth. They've got to recalculate that and figure out what raw score correlates to the component score and the scale score for the grade. And then domain 3 they have to fix, because domain 3 requires domain 2, the academic growth piece, to calculate that. So they're going to have to go back and redo domains 2 and 3. Don't know what that will be, don't know what it will look like, but basically whatever they had kind of listed as cut scores to make an A, say in academic achievement, is now under construction. All right, so we don't know what it'll be. We may know by the end of October is what they're telling us, so it'll probably be early October or late October, early November when we get that information. What does that pause mean? So I mentioned this before. So the calculations, nothing's changing there. So whatever was necessary for a student to get approaches or meets or masters, that's not changing. CCMR, unfortunately, is not changing. I got a little excited when the letter came out last week and hoped that there would be a paragraph in there about them backtracking on the CCMR. They are not. They're going to keep that in place, as egregious and, in my opinion, unethical as that is. Remember, that's the one where you were, last year, if you had a 66 scale score in CCMR, you were an A. This year, if you get a 66, you will be a C or a D campus. And those were for kids that had already graduated. CCMR looks at a rolling group of kids. We had nothing to do with those students last year. They had graduated in 22 and sometimes 21. And so we couldn't do anything about it, and they arbitrarily changed the scores to do that. It's kind of like, if you want a football analogy right now, lining up, you kick the field goal, and while the ball's in the air, they decide to move the field goal about 20 feet to the left and then blame you for missing the field goal. That's kind of where we're at with that. So they're not changing anything with CCMR, and then all the other calculations are the same. What they are looking at doing is changing, again, the academic growth grading scale. So what does it take to get an A, B, C, D as a campus and a district? That's being changed. And then domain 3, which looks at how you close the gaps in your campus and district, that is being rescaled as well based on those. And then CCMR, again, there was a humongous change on that, and they are not backtracking on that. So that's unfortunate. And then lastly, the delay will mean that we are going to be a little bit behind on some of the typical timelines. So we usually would have gotten preliminary ratings in August, and now it's September, and then they moved it to September. Now it's going to be late October or early November. There will be an appeal window, so once we get our score, if we feel like there's some data anomalies or things that aren't right, we can appeal. And then the final ratings will be put out in mid-February. Kind of an interesting timeline as we go along here if you notice some things. Then we get the taper report. I don't know if you remember when that normally comes out. It's around January when I come and talk to you about the taper report. And that just basically gives you sort of your school and district report card. That's going to now come out in early March. With school report cards soon to follow after that. And then only like 3 weeks later, our kids start taking the test for this year. So we'll find out what everything is for last year about 3 weeks before kids take the test for this year. So true TEA fashion. And then the federal report cards will also come out around that time. So that's sort of the timelines getting backed up a little bit. And then just to kind of give you one other bit of information. So 2023 is kind of setting in the sun. But I do want to remind you about our student achievement. And we shared this a little bit earlier, but just a reminder, however the academic growth measures come out and the A through F, which we've talked a long time about how we feel that that's unfair the way they're doing those things, our student achievement is still exceptional. And I want to remind you all that, so this is a busy graph, I know, or a busy table, but basically on the left, the blue columns are our performance in 21, 22, then 23. And in the green is what the state. And then if you look right kind of in the middle where it says MISD percent approaches 2023, that's pretty much like what the state considers passing. And so for our district, we have a higher standard than that, but that is what the state sort of reports out to the media. We are, every one of those boxes is green, which means our performance is above the state performance. And then when you see the number to the side, like a -2, that just means from one year to the next, we had a little bit of a drop in the percent of students that were approaches or above. But again, we still were above the state. And I would argue that where you see some of the -2, -1, keep in mind the test was much different. And so it's really not an apples to apples test. It was all online last year, first time ever. We had 2.0 questions, which were much harder, much more difficult, challenging to get answers down for. And then you also had different cut scores, like how many questions you had to get right to pass the test. And like Dr. Morrison mentioned last year, do any of those three things, and you would call in most states for a baseline year where you don't assign any kind of A through F grades, but our state decides to go forward and do that. But our students did great, our teachers did great. At the junior high, again, you'll see that entire row is all shaded green, which means we're above the state on every single test that we gave, and even into high school. And most of high school were actually did better this last year than the previous year with all those variables about the challenges in the test. So kudos to our students and to our teachers and our community for still having really, really good achievement results. And in 2024, I think the future still looks bright for us. We're already, have done big old deep dives into the data, figuring out what standards our kids didn't do so well on, which ones they did well on, mapping them to the curriculum that we have. We have routine data meetings with PLCs on campuses. The elementary team with their coaches and their support folks meet on a very regular basis. As you heard Ms. Ashlock talk about 2 to 4 times at least a month, they're out there meeting with them at the secondary level. We're meeting with campus admin teams, campus with their department chairs, and then also meeting during their PLCs. So lots of support for our teachers to be able to do that. We have the enhanced curriculum tools like in secondary. Remember, we are starting to launch this year the TEACS resource system, which has been really, really good. Our teachers are still learning. It's a learning curve on it, but they've found the tools, the YAGs, and the planning documents to be really helpful. We're also implementing our district-wide assessments at the end of each unit. And so that is another layer of some consistency we're trying to build in across the district. Year 2 of our MTSS, our multi-tiered systems of support. We're really starting to ramp that up and get those systems really in place on every campus, even to the point of including some new behavior approaches this year. We're starting to plan some of that. And then just, we have amazing teachers and leaders in MISD, and so we think the future's bright regardless of how they decide to do things with the A through F. And with that, any questions that I can have? I know I put a lot of information out there for you.
Any questions? Did you have something? I would just like to say, absolutely for myself, and I think I speak for us here, that what we're being handed is absolutely terrible and frustrating. But the good news is that we're not in this alone. It's every district in the state having to deal with this. But at the same time, I want our staff, teachers, all those working with our students to understand that we know that they are doing hard work out there and that this is only one little piece of information, and that we know that there's other ways and that we can see the results of their work, and we really appreciate that.
No, well said. Actually, that was just kind of the same message I wanted to give, was just even with all of these changes and challenges that our campuses have faced, I'm just so proud of our teachers and proud of our students and the work that they do.
All right, well, I will be back on some STAR stuff and whatnot in early November, I guess, when we get those scores.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is that it? All right, at this time, this meeting is adjourned.